Welcome to today's video where we will be exploring one of the most pressing economic issues of our time, inflation. You have probably heard about it in the news or even felt its effects in your own wallet. But what exactly is inflation, and how does it impact our daily lives? In this video, we will break down the basics of inflation and explore its causes, effects, and potential solutions. So, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you will be updated whenever we upload new videos like this. With that said, buckle up, grab a snack, and let's dive into the world of inflation. Have you ever noticed how the cost of everyday goods and services seems to keep going up? That's because of inflation. Inflation is when prices increase and the value of money decreases. It means that a dollar you have today won't be worth as much in the future. In normal circumstances, the inflation rate is around 2 to 3%. This means that prices of goods and services increase by that percentage each year. However, in some years, the inflation rate may be higher due to various factors such as changes in demand and supply, government policies, and economic conditions. In 2023, the inflation rate is at 6%. This means that prices of goods and services are increasing at a faster rate than usual. For example, if a gallon of milk costs $3 in 2022, it may cost $3.18 in 2023 due to the 6% inflation rate. This can lead to a decrease in the purchasing power of consumers' money, which can ultimately affect the economy. To measure inflation, economists use the Consumer Price Index or CPI, which looks at the prices of a shopping cart of goods and services over time. When the rate of inflation is high, it can trigger a recession and cause financial problems for individuals and families. There are two main causes of inflation: demand pull inflation and cost push inflation. Demand pull inflation happens when there's too much money around and not enough goods to buy, while cost push inflation happens when the cost of producing goods goes up without an increase in demand. Although inflation can be tough on consumers, it's actually necessary for a healthy economy. A little bit of inflation encourages people to buy goods and services, which stimulates the economy, and it can benefit those in debt, property owners, and commodity owners by increasing the value of their assets. To protect your finances from the effects of inflation, it's important to be aware of your spending habits and diversify your investment portfolio. You can also consider investing in the stock market or acquiring tangible assets like property or commodities. Now that we have covered the basics of inflation, let's take a closer look at its causes. And over the past 2 years, there have been 4 key contributors to inflation. The first contributor is a shift in demand from services to goods. With people canceling gym memberships and buying home gym equipment instead, the demand for goods has increased, and the demand for services has decreased. In just a few months, the economy shifted from being roughly 65% services and 35% goods to one that is more like 60% services and 40% goods. This sudden shift caused nominal price rigidities within sectoral demand changes, resulting in goods prices skyrocketing, while services prices remained stable. As the economy began to reopen more fully, consumer demand started shifting back to pre-pandemic proportions of goods and services. Still, services inflation picked up from where it had been, even as goods inflation was still normalizing, leading to higher inflation overall. The second contributor is vulnerabilities in supply chains. Shifts in spending on goods stress global supply chains, many of which already lacked resiliency due to decades of just-in-time production and the problems introduced by the pandemic itself. This led to supply chain bottleneck measures skyrocketing, causing higher inflation. For example, automobiles contributed almost nothing to inflation for the 2 decades prior to pandemic, but in 2021, they were responsible for 1.94 percentage points of inflation. Even now in 2023, the automobile industry is under a production shortfall of about 5 million automobiles due to the lingering effects of the temporary shutdown of production during lockdowns and the delays caused by a semiconductor shortage. The third contributor is the housing market and the increase in working from home. The cost of shelter is one of the highest points of price increases, growing 6.1%, annualized during 2021 and 2022 compared to 3.3% from 2018 to 2019. This has contributed significantly to overall inflation since it makes up roughly a third of the consumer price index. The housing market reflects significant changes in demand as a result of many workers shifting to remote work. By best estimates, roughly 5% of full-paid working days were from home pre-pandemic compared to 34% in 2021. This increase in remote work and housing demand is something that will likely continue, resulting in higher housing prices and rents. The fourth contributor is Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. This invasion increased U.S. inflation through effects on energy and food prices. The consumer price index for energy skyrocketed 18% in the 4-month period following the invasion, with food prices following shortly after that. Though the Federal Reserve is focused on observing core inflation, which excludes volatile energy prices, there were important second-order effects of those rapid increases in energy prices in the short run. Thanks to coordinated international efforts, including the important use of financial commitments to deploy and restock the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve, the consumer price index for energy has come down 11% since June to rates near the beginning of that war. Overall, these 4 key contributors to inflation have had a significant impact on the U.S. economy, and policymakers will need to continue to monitor them closely to ensure that inflation remains under control. As the world faces a rising tide of inflation, let's take a closer look at some of the countries that are currently experiencing some of the highest rates of inflation. Despite being from different regions, these countries have all been struggling with various economic and political issues that have contributed to their current inflation rates. Let's examine each country's situation in more detail. First, Zimbabwe, with an annualized inflation rate of 92.3%. The Republic of Zimbabwe, a landlocked country in southern Africa, has experienced economic and political crisis for much of the last couple of decades. Inflation in Zimbabwe currently sits at 92.3%, and the IMF projects that the country will lead the world in inflation in 2023 with a projected rate of 204.6%. This year's February reading of 92.3% marked a decrease from January's 101.5%. Zimbabwe has also changed its inflation measuring method by adopting a mix of prices in both the US dollar and the Zimbabwean dollar. Next is Argentina with an annualized inflation rate of 98.8%. The Argentine Republic, the second largest country in South America with a $1.2 trillion GDP, experienced a painful and shocking increase in prices in January 2023, with inflation shooting up by 98.8%. This occurred at a time when the central bank hiked the policy rate to an unbelievable 75%. Some believe that inflation may soar to 99.9% in 2023. Third, Lebanon, with an annualized inflation rate of 124%. The Republic of Lebanon, a Western Asian country that has experienced one economic crisis after another, saw its inflation rate soar to 124% in January 2023. The central bank was forced to devalue the currency by 90% in February 2023, leading supermarkets to list prices in US dollars instead. Next is Syria, with an annualized inflation rate of 139%. The Syrian Arab Republic, a Western Asian country with a GDP of $136 billion in 2021, devalued its currency by 50% in January 2023. Despite this, the country's inflation rate remains high at 139%, a reading that was last made in 2020. Last but not least, Venezuela, with an annualized inflation rate of 440%. Venezuela, a South American country with a $191 billion economy, has been plagued by a devastating rise in prices for years. Inflation data is hard to come by, and the central bank has not published any estimates since October of last year. However, the Venezuelan Economic Finance Observatory, an independent body of economists, released data in February 2023 showing an annualized inflation rate of 440%. The Venezuelan minimum wage was equal to $6.50 per month in January 2023. Inflation is a complex economic phenomenon that affects us all. Understanding what causes inflation and how it impacts our daily lives is crucial. By exploring the countries with the highest inflation rates, we can see the devastating effects inflation can have on an economy. Whether you're an investor, a consumer, or just someone trying to make ends meet, it's important to stay informed and be prepared for the challenges inflation can bring. And that's all for today. Thank you for watching, and hopefully this has been an enlightening experience for you. And for more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button. Until the next one, goodbye!